Hi, I may break this video up into two pieces rather than take a chance on what I did the other day on a portrait piece and got my iPad all jammed up. It just doesn't have enough memory. Okay, so let's start out. Here's where we are. Now, one of the things I'm going to do today is I'm going to darken this a bunch more and do some work in here. But let's go ahead and start the skin too. I have a couple of skin mixtures here. They're actually the same mixture. One's just stronger than the other. This is just Quin Coral and New Gamboge. And I'm going to, see, what we have here, this is real important because this is backlit. And we need that rim of light around here and right in through here, for instance, on his hands. Even there's a glow down here on the knee. By the way, that is, I think, a package of Fritos or Cheetos down here. Ignore that. So what we have, maybe there is another sea creature or something. So we're just filling this in down to this part with, water. And then this little spot right here, which I left out and hadn't done yet, is more of this rim coming across there. But we don't have that because there's that package of, bad for you stuff there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I want to keep those areas very light. They're not white, but they're very light. And so we're going to get pretty strong in here because it's the contrast between the darks and the lights here that really give you the backlit feel. So you have to get this dark enough and that light enough to get that glowing effect. All right, so here's my strategy. We're going to take it very carefully because these are very small. So it'd be real easy to get too much color out to the edges. So what I'm doing is I've got a small round brush here and I'm putting a lot of clean water pretty carefully, okay, on him, and I'm running it up through the hair. Let's just start out with, let's do this arm first. Let's practice on the arm. So this is no longer a quickie project like an almost person, even though we don't have faces. Okay. So I've got that. And of course, I'm going to be watching the sheen. I want that to soak in. I'll just go ahead and wet the legs too. I'll probably have to re-wet them. There's some skin right here. Down along here. All right. So give that time to soak in or almost soak in. I've got my lighter color here. Let's just pull, I squeeze this out. I'm just going to gently pull a little of the water up. I'm just mostly using the tip of the brush because I've still got the slightest sheen on it. And I'm going to go here to the darkest part of the arm. Remember, all of this is a little bit skin colored. So we actually want a little of this color to come out there. But we don't want too much. And this is going to seem bright because we're going to tone it down later. So I'm pulling a little bit of skin color over here, and I'm squeezing my brush out and pulling a little of it back up. But it won't go back to white when I do this. So we're just going to have to coax it along. Okay, now let's pick up a little more and let's look up here. Okay, the back of the neck and the ear are all pretty dark. And then we're going to just let that fade up into the hair. I'm going to squeeze this brush out and pull up a little more of the water. So I want a thin glaze of color here. Well, that's too strong. So remember, I'm putting it down and then I'm pulling it back up because there will be a tiny bit left there. And we'll just make all of this go kind of light right here. And the tip of the ear. So if this area just in here is just lighter, we're going to put more darks in over here later. But this is also kind of primed, which will make it a lot easier to work with. Okay, let's look at the legs. The legs dried enough that there's no sheen on them. This little bit of ankle and this leg. I'll just put a little bit more water back on here. And then I'm going to immediately pull most of it back up. I just wanted to make sure. Now I have a pale, just bare sheen on this. So just move all that in together. And this area is lit differently. It's not backlit. There's no backlighting in this at all. That looks just a little too pink too, doesn't it? So the highlight is right here. There's my brave attack dog out there. I have not been attacked by even one squirrel since I got her. Of course, I've never been attacked by a squirrel. Okay, but, you know, it could happen. Okay, there. So let's go over to the other side. Now, the knee, what has he got here? He's got some kind of drink glass or something in his hand. You know, I never even noticed this, but I drew the leg right here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ignore that glass. Just like we're ignoring the Frito. I think it's Cheetos. I don't know. I haven't had any of that stuff in a long time. So on this one, I'm going to wet down the leg and not the hand. You know, a lot of the time, like down here, I actually run that first layer of colors together. But these are so small, and I want some separation there. It's just a little bit easier to keep track of, too. It can get kind of complicated sometimes trying to follow multiple body parts at once. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get this area pretty dark. We're definitely going to have to, I'm going to have to compensate with more yellow in my mix next time out. And I'm going to come up here. Well, we're going to have color everywhere on it, just like the other. But remember, we're going to lift part of it. So I'm going to make this part of the knee go light. The part that you can't see. So you kind of have to follow what I'm doing here. Even this part of the calf here is a little lighter. Now, you know, this could use a little more color on it. It's this part right up here that I want to stay light, because that's catching that light coming this way. See, so I can squeeze that brush out. I can also add, I just barely touch the tip of the brush into the water. So I've got this tiny little bit of water here that I can put in that can push the other color back, or that is, it's holding a place. Okay, so there we go there. Now let's go up to his head. So he's getting a little bit more of the reflected light. Don't try to get this all dark at once. It's not that you couldn't master that, but I'm really recommending that you don't try. This is the way that I would go about it if I was just doing it myself. I might cut, this will probably be a 3-step process, and I would cut 1 step out of it if I was not doing it with a class, but I wouldn't try to do it all in one whack. Just pull that up into the hair. I want to keep that kind of light up here, though. He's got a lot of light on his hair. Okay, so let's go in and let's suck up. Let's see, I want the color to, at some point, get on everything, but then I want to pull it back up immediately. So I'm squeezing out the brush. I'm pulling up a little outline and a lot right here and some right there. Well, then I've got to take my brush and just barely dip the tip of it into the water. See it push back the color? And I want a little highlight here. Now, it's very possible that I'll come back with white ink and get some of these tiny areas a little bit more. You can see a little bit of a halo there around the ear. Don't make that lighter. That halo is still much darker than the rest of him. So then we're going to get this light on his neck right here. Squeezing the brush out, pulling up, taking the tiniest bit of water and adding back in, and then kind of keeping an eye on it. I'm pretty happy with what happened here. I'm adding a little bit more water. Just gonna watch it just a little bit. See, this is probably the most delicate thing that you'll do on this. Now, we're going to come back to this hand in a few minutes, but rather than my going to the dryer, I'm going to switch processes. So I'm setting this aside temporarily, and we're going to take on the big challenge. All right. What we need is, we need this really dark area in here, because that's going to help us judge our midtones. So we need a really dark area. You can see that this has plyboard here that's stained. I think that it's an absolute waste to even bother with that plywood, but if you choose to do so, make sure that this other part stays dark. You need a really strong dark around here. This frames it with a dark. It makes his lights pop out. So what I am mixing is the same mix that we used before. I'm using a Quin Burnt Scarlet and a little bit of Quin Gold. You know, I can judge that Queen Gold better after I put some blue in. I'm going to use quite a lot of blue this time. I'm mixing up a lot of color here. Way more than you're going to need because I need it for one other class. So if I get too much, it's okay because I'll use it up. What I want this time, see how the first time we had a really orangey, reddish color. Now I want to go with a lot more blue. And I'm using the indigo. And, you know, maybe I won't put Queen Gold in this, or I'll use very little. I got a little bit in there. Now more of the blue. Let's see how this looks. If it's too thin, it'll look kind of dirty here. So I want to lay it on, you know, I want this color to be pretty strong. I think that will work. I wish it was just a tiny bit stronger, the fact of business is. So when you start to do this project, make sure that you pre-wet your color before, you know, like 30 minutes or better than that, an hour. Really wet down the color real well so that you can get strong color up. That's a little more blue in there. Okay, can you see how? See, I've got a nice puddle here so that I can load my brush up. And you could use either a big round or a big flat. I'm barely putting any weight on this at all. I'm going to, let's see, over here. Smooth that edge out a little bit. My brush is loaded and I'm barely using any pressure at all. Now I'm going to switch to a big round. Well, it's a number 10 round. Squeeze it out so that you're not letting a bunch of water down into this. You don't want to thin it out. Whoops. I'll try to remember to stay in the frame here. You know, I should have done that spot there when I had, before I put all this blue in this. There. Now, before, got all these loaded up brushes sitting here. Before I go on, let's see, no, I'm going to leave this like this. Okay, never mind. Forget that I said before. Okay. Or what I said before about before. This is a loaded brush. It is very loaded. And by the way, this part down here crops off. You know, I guess this should go like that. Loaded. See, look at this. Loading that brush up. See, lay it all the way down in there. Don't press it down like this and pull color up because you're actually squeezing some of the color out of the brush when you press down. Just lay it in there and load it. It's just going to drip. Switch flat. See how that just barely, my brush is just barely putting any pressure down here at all. This looks so nice and rich and dark. And of course, when it dries, it won't be this dark or this rich. So go for broke. Get it really, really strong. Now, I used indigo. You could use black in there with your Quinn Burnt Scarlet. See, that's another way to use this round. Just bump it up to the space like that. Okay, now, this is where I let the paint rest. I don't do anything else to it. I go off and leave it. Well, the fact is that I might get tempted, and when this is drying, and maybe spatter into it a little bit or run a little bit of, just the barest bit of texture. Don't need to. The main thing is to have it dark. Okay, so I'll be right back as soon as this dries. Okay, let's do this one little part here, and then I'm going to put this to unloading. So this is going to be Aquarium Part 2A. And then I'll put Part 2B up in just a little while from now. Well, not just a little while. I have to wait. It takes us about an hour and a half to load to YouTube. And then I have to clear it and get it off of my iPad before I can make any more. I need to find out if there's something I can add to this iPad to increase the memory. I don't guess there is, but I ought to check. Sure would make a life flow better. Just when you get in the groove, you have to stop. All right, so I pre-wet that, just like I've been doing. So we'll get a little darker right here along these knuckles. Down this way. And then we can just spread the color. I'm going to wash my brush out. And just spread the color up this way. Actually, it'd be nice to have a little bit more color right along here. And down the back of the arm. Something about like that, okay? It doesn't have to be real exacting because your next layer will be the exacting part. Okay. Got that a little darker. Of course, this is dry and this is wet. We'll see.